Okay, so the online application process is through the research.gov portal, which is also what your faculty PIs use to submit their grants. There is a specific link to, once you make a research.gov account, that would be your first step to getting access to submit this, is research.gov. You make an account, affiliate with the institution, and then you would get set up in the GRFP module just to start your application. The application components for this, there are 4 sections that you want to think about here. You'll have your personal relevant background and future goals statement, which is a 3-page statement. All of these, it's a maximum. I will say I would take the full page because when you're in review and you have reviewers who are comparing an application of the 2-page out of a 3-page maximum versus a 3-page, I would almost always say it goes for the person who takes the full page limit. So take that full page opportunity in anything you're doing. I would take the full page opportunity as possible to really advocate for yourself is why you should be getting these funds. So you'll have a 3-page personal relevant statement. Then you'll have your graduate research plan, which is a 2-page statement. And then you'll need final transcripts. All of these I'm going to break it down a little bit more. And reference letters. And your reference letters will be submitted in the same system. You'll be able to have, input 5 people to have reference letters from. There will be a minimum of 3, I believe, that they'll need to receive in order to actually review your application, but you can have up to 5. And the formatting generally, and this is actually pretty across the board for NSF grants, is 11-point font needs to be used in Times New Roman, 1-inch margins, single line spacing. Equations and special characters may be inserted as non-editable images. The deadline, I would have a real deadline here if there was a real deadline. But it is by the degree area. So last year it was October 16th for like social sciences, October 17th for biological sciences. So they were like just back-to-back deadlines based off of the degree area. So I'm really hoping that we have a new solicitation soon from the NSF for this program so we can see when the actual deadlines are. But we can hopefully anticipate at the end of October. So here's a little bit more about that personal relevant background and future goals statement. So again, the maximum you have is 3 pages. Sorry, this is touching on both of these documents. And the maximum for your research plan is 2 pages. And then you have to certify that this is your own original work. That means if you're using AI, don't be. And then you're going to be, they do check for this stuff. I will say, like, the NIH is like coming out with new policies about AI on awards, and faculty are losing awards. They run for that, so just like don't. I would not do that because you're going to have to certify that it is your own work. And so here's what you're going to get reviewed on. Any NSF proposal. We'll see how things change in the landscape of things, but all NSF proposals are reviewed based off your intellectual merit and broader impacts. So for this GRFP, they are looking at your intellectual merit and broader impacts, both in your research plan and in your personal statement. So both of these documents, they're reviewing the following criteria, which I will jump to now in the next section. So the intellectual merit essentially is does your proposal advance knowledge? You've identified the gap in the literature or in the science or whatever, and you're addressing it in some way, like you're growing the science, there's intellectual merit to what you're doing. Your broader impacts criterion, that you have some potential benefit to society and to contribute to specific desired societal outcomes. I think a lot of people, in this space now, and it's a bad word to be using, like DEI, but a lot of previous grants that were DEI focused, had broader impacts focused on that. However, I think we can take it a step back, and some things with DEI aren't getting funded, and broader impacts does not necessarily at all need to be at all diversity, equity, and inclusion related and specific. It can be broader impacts. Again, I'll give an example, someone in our college who does mining and the societal impact of like having the mining value in the state better to be assessed. So your societal impacts, I think for NSF have been very focused in DEI, but they don't need to be. And honestly, right now, I wouldn't be writing an application with DEI impacts as your broader impact, just because that stuff is getting kind of flagged and rejected for funding, which is a sad, weird space to be in that I'm advising that way, but that's just kind of what it is. So if you want funding, I've been control Fing and removing DEI literally out of every application. It's not great, so that's just how it is right now. So I would not use those words. And you can have the concepts, but without using the words, so gaining, I have a list of workaround terms basically to say the same thing without saying the thing. So just something to consider as you are writing for federal fellowships across the board right now. Yes, so broader impacts. What is the potential for your proposed activity? This is the reviewer criteria. So these are the questions they look at for your application. What is the potential for the proposed activity to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields, and again, benefit society? And desired societal outcomes? To what extent do the proposed activities suggest and explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts? Is the plan for carrying out the proposed activities well-reasoned, well-organized, and based on a sound rationale? Does the plan incorporate a mechanism to access success? How well qualified is the individual team or organization to conduct the proposed activities? And are there adequate resources available to the PI or you, the graduate student, in developing your proposal? So these are what the review criteria looks like. So after these statements for this, you're going to have to do some transcripts, and this is also pretty standard for your federal fellowship applications. They're probably going to need to be official transcripts. All I can say about this is contact your prior institutions super ahead of time. Honestly, if I were y'all and myself as an incoming graduate student, getting some official transcripts on hand, just to have them on hand isn't a bad idea, just because pretty much any fellowship application you're going to look at is going to require transcripts, and sometimes institutions take many weeks to process. They can be fast, but we've had people I know have people go very slowly on the administrative role for getting full transcripts. So I would recommend honestly ordering some from previous institutions and just having some official on hand that you can be like, I got it, I got it ready for however many applications you end up planning to submit. So that's just a statement about that. So you're going to have to put all of your institutions where you've received a degree from, you're going to need a transcript from that institution. Second-year graduate students are strongly advised to submit an official transcript. If you are in that second year and in classes and you can't get an official transcript, they do allow you to submit your class schedule as instead. So that is a little bit more about your transcripts. Your reference letters, like I mentioned, your reference letters for this would also go through research.gov. So how it works is you put in their names, they get an email with a code, and I'm actually pretty sure the UNLV graduate school application process had something similar where they get a code to upload their letter for you. They have a 2-page limit on their letter, and their submission deadline is the same time as your deadline would be. Again, faculty get busy, get this on their calendar way ahead of time. So if you know you're going to be applying in October, I would even be talking to them now and being like, hey, can I get a reference letter for this submission that hopefully comes out in October if the NSF gets its stuff together, So hopefully that will be the case, and you can have things already kind of go in on that end. So your reference letters, it cannot be family members. Applicants are provided to provide at least 3, but up to 5 non-family members. 2 reference letters from non-family members must be received by the reference letter deadline for the application to be reviewed. If fewer than 2 reference letters, 1 or none, are received, the application will not be reviewed. So if you don't have the 3, it doesn't get reviewed. That's how they do that. And then again, this is just the same formatting parameters essentially for the application. You have your 11-point font, your standard page size, 8.5 by 11 inches, your 1-inch margins, and you want your letter really the important section. Well, it's all important because if it's not in the right format, it gets rejected. So it is all important, but you have your formatting here, same as the formatting for your application, but really the content of your letter, you want to make sure that I'm thinking collaborator, but your letters of reference, you essentially want them to explain the nature of your relationship, if they're in an advisor role or in a previous advisor role, comments about your potential for contributing to the globally engaged U.S. science and engineering workforce, statements about your academic potential, prior research experiences, statements about your proposed research, really, so it's related to your project. You don't want it to be vague, you don't want it to be general. I would say this for any application you're going to. Sometimes people get busy and they don't want to write a full reference letter. Do it for them, write a draft. So write your draft reference letter. Here's what you've done for them. If you've worked with someone and they've been a previous advisor and you've already worked in their lab and you did X, Y, and Z, write that down, put it into a letter format, send it to them. They can make the edits and oversee that, but quite frankly, half of my job, I feel like, is sometimes doing that. Just people don't have time, and that's okay, but you want your reference letter to be specific to your project, and it needs to be that way. If it's general, they're gonna say it's not responsive, and you're not gonna get good reviews because of your reference letter. So you want your reference letters to be specific, and again, any application you're going for, in life, job interviews, whatever, get as specific as you can. If you need to help them write it, please do that. I know some people might feel weird about that, but I just would disagree. I think it's great to be proactive and take the initiative for yourself to do that. So, okay, I think I know I've thrown a whole lot of information at you. So now I'll open it up for questions. Any questions you have, we can gab about the state of affairs. And you can always reach out to me on email too. So I'm here to support and at least connect you to resources in your department and college for your future applications. Yeah, yes.
Is there any chance that we'll get an email or something being hey, we do have that,
There's usually, I feel like the NSF GRFP has gotten, and I'll have to check with what graduate school communications are coming out, because for faculty, they update pretty much weekly. There's faculty work internally with it's called the Office of Sponsored Programs to submit all of their projects, and they share funding opportunities available. So the NSF GRFP, they'll share probably with faculty for sure that it's an available program for the students to apply to. In terms of the students getting those communications, I'm honestly not sure. I mean, if I were in your shoes, I would maybe just keep an eye on, I know it's annoying to keep an eye on it on the website, but it says, if you type into any of your surfaces for, web interface, and you just type in NSF GRFP, it's gonna bring you to the web page, and what you'll see at the top is that it says awaiting new solicitation. And so if it keeps saying that, then it's still awaiting the new solicitation. But I mean, obviously, given that we know previous deadlines have been in end of October, I would hope something would come out by September. I would hope. So, but I am not the NSF, so I don't know too well, but I would just keep an eye on it would be my best advice, actually. I'm sorry. It's not fun, but.
We're all in the same boat.
You look like you have a question? No? No? It's just no, yeah, sorry. No, just the eye contact that I was having. Anyone else, any questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, Houston.
Explain the day-to-day, what does it look like for you from soups to nuts, from the start of a grant to the end of your process?
Sure. Yeah. That's a great question. It truly depends on where the faculty are at in terms of like I will say brand new junior faculty, like them having this presentation would be valuable. Like that's something we're talking about doing internally for the college, is like the exposure to federal grants really depends on what stage you're in. So sometimes I have meetings with new PIs and I'm just talking about very basics of grants generally, and what their agencies are looking for, like how many their page limits for their documents, stuff like that. But typically I interface mostly about the budget and justification for PI. So like every day is a little different and it depends on the project. Sorry, it's not like a very straightforward answer, but it depends on where the PI is at in building up their project. So we might be earlier in the start of documents, in which I'm sharing templates for documents. They're inputting the templates and I'm reviewing them. Sometimes they don't need templates from me, so they'll just send me what they have. I'll review it for compliance and make sure it looks good and has everything that they need from the sponsor. But at least daily, I'm in sponsor portals, uploading documents for PIs. So for NSF, it's research.gov, for NIH, it's Assist. And I'm definitely looking at least a budget every day. So I have to make sure that we're requesting graduate student funding like at the appropriate minimum rates, and that we're not like, I don't know, funding undergraduates at like $8 an hour, because sometimes that still comes up and I'm like, that's not really how we should be doing things. So I would look at a budget on a day-to-day. So for me, it's a lot of document review, a lot of communication back and forth. Aspects of it are project management. So like when I know a PI is applying for a deadline in October, let's say, like I'll be working out months in advance to make sure that hopefully they have most of their budget materials together well in advance, but sometimes they need additional letters of support. So then they'll be reaching out to units on campus, like the Office of Undergraduate Research. I end up emailing Rafi a lot to get signatures on letters of support for grants and stuff that are getting submitted by the PI. So it truly just depends on the project and what the needs are and what they need. But like my scope is that I'm there to support and like the capacity of reviewing for compliance, and sometimes they don't share all their documents with me, and that's okay, but I essentially help them interface with the Office of Sponsored Programs, who is the official submitter on campus, and I get everything ready to get to sponsored programs, and then sponsored programs goes in, make sure it's all, they do a double take on it because we have all the people checking for all the compliance things, and then they will go in and submit the actual with a click button submit. So I don't have that pressure of the submit button, which makes me feel kind of a little bit better about like putting together stuff. But yeah, that's kind of roughly my day today. Any other questions? Well, thank you for having me here. I hope it wasn't boring. I'm really into the grant stuff, obviously. It's my job and what I'm interested in, what I'm doing a PhD degree for, is the administrative burden on running federal grants. But anyway, so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to hang out for a little bit, and I have business cards if you want my email that way. Again, I'm Brooklyn. Thanks for having me.